Hello mech warriors, today we continue our review of the best mechs in the clan invasion era for the Inner Sphere. Previously we covered flankers, those very fast mechs, but now we're moving on to cavalry. To start, let's define what cavalry is. If we look at the classic Battletech triangle here, you'll see that cavalry sits directly in the center. It has a good balance of firepower, mobility, and durability. Durable enough to take a couple of good shots. Their speed increases their already decent durability by being able to generate 3 TMM, and they have enough firepower that they can either put pressure on enemies or get around behind them and punch open their back armor with their close range weapons. I've emphasized battle value efficiency and battlefield effectiveness in this review. So starting out, we have the Nightsky. This is a great light cavalry unit. For cavalry, I normally like to have at least 15 armor on every section, but the Nightsky just about covers that. The only place where it's a little bit thin is the arms, but most of the weapons are torso mounted, with the exception of that main armament of the large pulse laser, as well as the hatchet. Now, I'm not really that concerned about losing the hatchet. I'm a little more concerned about losing the large pulse laser, but you can still take a bit of punishment on that arm before losing that LPL. Now, 6'9" movement is quite quick for cavalry. It's almost into flanker territory, if I'm being honest, for the Nightsky. 6'9" movement is acceptable flanker speed, but the Nightsky has that nice balance of firepower, durability, and mobility that I think puts it into the cavalry role. We have just a whole bunch of pulse lasers here, really great for hunting down enemy fast movers, and also great for jumping behind enemies and blasting open their rear armor. The Nightsky is an unholy terror. Now, the Nightsky 5S is oversynced, but is a lot cheaper. 1045 battle value. It's the cheapest mech on this list, but the base 6'9" movement makes it a little bit less maneuverable than its cousin, the Nightsky 4S. Now, you're saving about 100 battle value. It's up to you whether you think that's worth it or not. For me, I think the 4S is definitely much better, because jump jets are just incredibly strong, especially in combination with pulse lasers. So if you've got the extra, say, 1 to 200 battle value, because you're probably going to want 4 piloting on this, I would recommend the upgrade to the 4S. Next, we have one of the most maligned mechs in the game, the Chameleon. However, this version of the Chameleon is actually quite good. A 50-tonner is the ideal mech size for 6'9" movement with a standard fusion engine. So the Chameleon, in my opinion, is a very underutilized chassis, but the 7W makes pretty good use of it. 144 armor is enough to get 15 on every location. I'd like to see a little bit more on the legs, if I'm being honest, but we do have all of the weapons in the arms, so armoring those arms is pretty important. We've got an ER large laser and a medium laser, as well as 1 medium pulse laser, so it kind of doesn't have a specific preferred range. It can kind of fight at all ranges. 1243 battle value is pretty decent overall. It's not too expensive, not super cheap. The Chameleon 7W will definitely fulfill that light cavalry or heavy flanker role. It's not particularly great at hunting down enemy light mechs. It doesn't do that much overall damage, but it is very flexible. So I love the Chameleon 7W as a really flexible cavalry unit. It can kind of skirmish at long range with the ER large laser, and then it can close in and use its close range weapons to put the hurt on enemies. Next up, we have another 50-tonner, the Enfield 6Q. It's deceptively actually kind of less durable than the Chameleon because of that XL engine and only 5'8" movement, meaning that it's not going to be able to keep up that 3 TMM very often. But while its armor is intact, it's definitely more durable. 24 on the legs, 20 on the torsos, 26 on the CT. This is actually a pretty tough mech to bring down, and it has a great weapon complement. LB-10X autocannon, right torso has case, not really that relevant for most missions, but if you're in campaign, that is very good to have because it means you can recover the mech after the mission instead of just losing it entirely. The LB-10X is just a really great flexible weapon, and then it's got a large pulse laser and 2 medium lasers as well as a small laser for that close-in weapons complement. 1248 battle value, making it very affordable. If you want a little bit more offense and a little bit less mobility, then this is a great alternative to the Chameleon for around the same battle value price. This mech will do a heck of a lot more damage, but if you get unlucky and you get hit in those side torsos a few times, it can go down pretty easily. So the Enfield 6Q, great budget cavalry pick overall. Speaking of budget cavalry, I'm a big fan of the Wolverine 7K. It has that primo 585 movement profile at a really reasonable price of 1331 battle value. A little bit up armored compared to the Enfield. 26 on the legs and the CT makes this thing really hard to take down. 6 on the rear torsos means that it's actually a lot harder for the rear torsos to get taken out. 18 on the arms means that those arm weapons are very well protected. The XL engine, definitely a little bit of a weakness here, but you've got enough armor to take a real pounding before this mech will go down most of the time, and it has an absolutely blistering close-range firepower profile, 1 of each type of pulse laser, and 2 SRM6s with 2 tons of ammo, meaning that you can bring some Infernos to burn out some toads real good. It has perfectly adequate heat sinking as long as you are running. If you jump and fire everything, you will pick up a little bit of heat, but it's easy enough to take a cooldown turn after doing a jumping alpha strike, and it's not like it's going to put you into overheating territory just from 1 turn of use. It can hole punch with the large pulse laser, it can cause heat with the 2 SRM6s, great at hunting elementals, vehicles, or crit seeking out damaged enemy mechs. Next up on our budget picks here, the Morpheus P1. This is a bit of a strange mech. It's a 65-ton 696 unit that dedicates nearly the entirety of its tonnage to mobility and armor, leaving it with a paltry 2 medium pulse lasers and single medium laser, but also carrying an ECM and active probe, as well as an anti-missile system to further increase its durability. The Morpheus is very weird. It has very pathetic firepower for a mech of its size, but it's still enough for it to hunt down enemy light mechs, and it's got that 65 tons behind it, so it can bring some nasty kicks to the fight, and it's got crazy good armor, 23 on the torsos, 6 on the rear, 34 on the front center torso, 30 on the legs, and 20 on the arms. This mech is pretty much a really big chameleon, and because it has such a pathetic amount of offense, its battle value is extremely low, only 1340. So I would take this as just a big brick of armor that you can use to run objectives or hold objectives. It's very good at taking a beating because it can consistently get 3 TMM, and it has a ton of armor. Speaking of large, fast mechs, we also have the Exterminator 4D, which sacrifices pretty significantly on the armor protection in order to bring a much more formidable weapons armament to bear. It also carries an anti-missile system, but has 4 medium lasers, a small laser, and an LRM-10. So this mech is a little more flexible. It has the LRM-10 to fight at long range, and a pretty decent close-range weapons complement. It lacks ECM and the Beagle probe, so it's not quite as good as a scout mech, and because it carries so many more weapons, the 20 heat sinking is less sufficient on this mech than it is on the Morpheus. But again, 1385 battle value, it's relatively cheap, and it has a bit more firepower. So between the Exterminator 4D and the Morpheus, I think both mechs are pretty excellent. Now here's a chassis that we don't talk about very often on this channel, unless it's to make fun of it. The Shadowhawk actually has 3 quite good configurations available in the Clan Invasion era. First, let's look at the Shadowhawk C. This is essentially a regular Shadowhawk that has been equipped with Clan technology. We've got an LBX-5, we've got an LRM-5, we've got a Streak SRM-2 in the head, and an ER medium laser. Now, this doesn't look that impressive, especially because the LBX cannon, you're probably gonna just take cluster ammo with it, since one 5 damage hit probably isn't as good as a bunch of smaller hits with pellets because of the -1 to hit that you get with cluster. But we've got range 4-8-12 on the Streak clan. The LRM-5 can fire at close range, meaning that all of these weapons can be used right up close and personal with your enemy. And the ER medium laser essentially acts like a large laser. So this is actually a pretty good mech, and the single heat sinks actually don't really affect it, since its weapons don't produce that much heat. We've got a standard engine, so it's pretty durable. We've got 16 armor on the legs and arms, 18 on the torsos, 23 on the CT. It does unfortunately have explosive ammo in all of the torso locations, so it is a bit of a walking bomb. But as you can see in the TRO here, we've got 2 heat sinks and the LRM-5 in the right torso. We've got 2 jump jets in the left torso, and we've got a jump jet in the center torso. So it's reasonably well crit padded. I would love to see a little more crit padding if possible, but you can't have everything. Overall, for 1300 battle value, this is a solid little cavalry mech. Now, I probably wouldn't take this if I was playing in a campaign, just because the resupply for an Innisphere unit is going to be pretty difficult, but if you happen to run into some clan tech, might not be a bad way to refit your mech. Next, we have the Shadowhawk 2HT. Now, pretty expensive, 1453 battle value. Same armor as the Shadowhawk C, see, it has the double heat sinks it needs to cool its extra weapons. We've got a large laser, 2 medium lasers, and 5 Streak SRM2s with case on the right torso. So it's very well crit padded, and it also has the case in there so that it won't explode and die. And I love that it has the large laser in the left torso, so it's really well protected, and even if it loses that right torso with all the Streak SRM2s, it's still got some firepower with the medium laser on the left arm and the large laser in the left torso. 5 Streak SRM2s is actually pretty deceptively deadly. This is a potential of 10 hits, and the weakness of a normal SRM2 doesn't really apply here. SRM2s normally suck because the 2 cluster is very unlikely to get a hit of 2, but Streaks always hit every missile, and if they miss, they don't overheat your mech and they don't expend ammo. So even though we only have technically 10 rounds of fire here, it's actually going to be closer to 12, 13, maybe even 15 if we're missing a lot with our Streak SRMs. So this is a mech that can pretty much alpha strike every single turn without really worrying too much about heat. It's going to hit 14 from the lasers, and then you're going to add maybe on average with decent dice like 6 from the Streak SRM2s. So you might overheat a little bit. If you spike your dice and hit everything somehow, you're going to overheat quite a bit, but you've got 20 double heat sinks. You can just shut off a large laser for a turn and cool your mech down. So I like the Shadowhawk 2HT. It's a little bit expensive on the battle value, but it's very effective at crit seeking and has a little bit of hole punching with the large laser. Pretty much everything that you want in a cavalry mech. Lastly, we have the Shadowhawk 5S. 1590 battle value. It's quite expensive, but it has 695 movement. It has ECM and an active probe. It's got 184 armor, so 26 on the legs, 27 on the CT, 19 on the side torsos, and 18 on the arms. 4 medium lasers and a medium pulse laser, as well as a large laser in the right arm, and half a ton of cargo. Not really going to be that useful to you overall, but a great raider mech. Rock on up with this thing to an enemy base, load up whatever cargo you need from their supplies, and run off with your 695 movement. It has enough firepower to bully light mechs really effectively. It's all energy, so there's no ammo to blow up. The XL engine, kind of a little bit of a durability problem, but overall the Shadowhawk 5S is a pretty well optimized little unit with some interesting quirks. The 0.5 tons of cargo. 695 is a great movement profile. It's got quite a few double heat sinks. Overall, I like the Shadowhawk 5S. Its price tag is a little bit high. 1600 BV for a cavalry mech. I kind of expect a cavalry mech with that level of cost to really do some damage, and I guess this can do that. I'd probably take a Shadowhawk 2HT over this most of the time, just based on the battle value cost and the excellent crit seeking that the 2HT has. I'm also, as many people who watch this channel know, a big fan of standard fusion engines, and not as much of a fan of the XLs. Let's go back to something a little bit more budget friendly. We've got the Wildfire, just under 1300 battle value, 6'9 movement profile, on a 65 tonner. It's got that XL engine, does have a little bit of a durability issue there, but with 24 armor on the side torsos, that engine is very well protected, and we've got some really good weapons here. One of each pulse laser, 2 machine guns, meaning that the small pulse laser and 2 machine guns will absolutely shred enemy infantry. You can even hit them with the machine guns with the primary attack, and then split off the attack with the small pulse laser onto something else maybe. The large and medium pulse laser will deal with bigger threats, and 2 Streak SRM2s, great for a little bit of crit seeking. Again, for campaigns, you've got case in the right torso with all the ammo bins there, which is good because the only things in the right torso are ammo and the engine crits themselves. Now it has that weird problem that the Crusader does, where its SRMs are mounted in the legs, which is pretty weird, and definitely a detriment because it means if you fire these, you cannot kick. Now, one thing to note about this mech is that it does have a torso-mounted cockpit, which is a pretty big detriment, but in my opinion, the battle value price is definitely right here. 1292 battle value is very cheap. Now, we can't talk about cavalry in the Clan Invasion era without talking about the Blackhawk KU. The 2 mechs that I want to look at specifically are the OB and O variant. The OB, because it is very budget friendly, has an Ultra AC5 and a large pulse laser. Not particularly great overall, it's very oversynced, but it's one of the cheapest ways to get 200 armor on the field in the Clan Invasion era, and the weapons certainly aren't completely useless, they're just not particularly fantastic. But 28 armor on the legs, 30 on the center torso, 20 on the side torsos and arms. It's pretty tough to bring down. 585 movement profile means that it can generate that 3 TMM pretty reliably. And even if it takes some engine crits, it has enough heat sinking that it's not really going to care about them. Which means that to reduce its combat effectiveness, the enemy either has to get 3 engine crits or take out one of the side torsos. And with the 60 tons, it can do a big 12 damage kick, which is pretty impressive. Now its cousin, the O variant, is very, very powerful, but is also very expensive. 1731 battle value. This is a premium cavalry mech. 4 medium pulse lasers, 6 medium lasers, 2 small lasers, and enough heat sinks to fire everything pretty comfortably. If you alpha strike, you will start heating up, especially if you're jumping, but at some point one of your arms is probably going to get blown off, and then you won't have any heat-seeking issues anymore. This mech is not only extremely good at just dealing damage, but it's also really good at not getting outflanked, because it has so many weapons in each arm that it can just turn around and blow up any light mech that gets into its rear arc. I am a big fan of the Blackhawk KU-O. Speaking of medium laser boats, we have the Crusader 6T, which I'm going to be comparing directly to the Blackhawk KU-O. Instead of taking a few pulse lasers and some medium lasers, the Crusader 6T takes nothing but medium lasers while carrying a flamer in each leg and a C3 computer. It has comparatively better armor. 25 instead of 28 on the legs is still very effective, able to take a Gauss rifle and a large pulse laser to the leg without going internal. Still 20 on the arms. 24 on the side torsos means that its XL engine is less vulnerable, although it's slightly more vulnerable from the rear, and a little bit of extra armor on the CT as well is always nice. The Crusader 6T is more expensive at 1890 battle value. It gets that small increase in melee damage as well as an increase in its internal structure, meaning that its legs and side torsos are a little harder to take out. The Crusader has a very slight edge in raw damage output and is a little bit better at longer ranges, such as range 6 and 9. But the Blackhawk has those medium pulse lasers, which are much more effective against fast movers, and also much more effective once you close to point blank range, which is pretty much where these mechs both want to be anyways. Overall, my pick is probably the Blackhawk KU, just because it costs 160 battle value less and has those pulse lasers. But if you're in, say, a tournament and you're limited on the number of pulse lasers that you can bring, the Crusader 6T is a great option. Both of these mechs are a lot of fun. I have run the Crusader 6T personally, and it is an absolutely brutal damage monster. Imagine a hunchback 4P that moves at 585, kicks even harder, and has like 50% more damage output. That's the Crusader 6T. Now, speaking of premium cavalry mechs, we gotta talk about the Lynx. The 9C and the 9Q are both pretty good. Great armor protection. Maxed armor for a 55-tonner is always excellent. The XL engines give a little bit of a durability issue, and they are rather expensive. $1630 for the Lynx 9C, $1725 for the Lynx 9Q. The 9C has 2 Streak SRM2s, whereas the 9Q has a large laser instead. That is literally the only difference between these two mechs. If you're on a budget, the Lynx 9C is probably better in my opinion, costing about 100 battle value less. It has better crit seeking ability, but it is explosive, which is a downside. Meanwhile, the Lynx 9Q is completely energy based, and it's pretty comfortable with its weapon complement. It can fire the ER-PPC and large laser at long range, and then it can turn off the PPC and turn on all of the medium lasers once it gets in close. With 30 heat sinking, you can even technically alpha strike everything and be in an okay spot, especially if you're just jumping away to cool down for a turn afterwards. The Lynx is overall a very mean mech. It does cost a bucket of battle value points, especially if you want to increase the gunnery and piloting, which you might want to since none of its weapons are pulse lasers, but with excellent armor protection, really great weapons at every range, and that premium 585 movement profile with 30 heat sinking. The Lynx is both a noob-friendly mech and one that veterans can use to exploit enemy weaknesses very well. If you're thinking about taking a Shadowhawk 2HT for an extra 200 battle value, the Lynx 9C is not a bad alternative to that. Alright, now I saved the best for last. You could lambaste me in the comments if you want for a couple of questionable choices, such as the Morpheus, which is technically an only Solaris mech, but there is no denying, in my opinion, that the Star Slayer is the finest cavalry mech in the Inner Sphere in the 3050s. In particular, I think the Star Slayer 3C is really strong. We have a well crit padded side torso. The left torso does have that ammo in there, but it has case, and it's got 3 different weapons, plus the inclusion of 2 jump jets to add a little bit of extra crit padding. 2 medium lasers and an SRM-4 is an incredible close-range complement. We've got SRM for crit seeking, 2 medium lasers, just raw efficiency, and twin large lasers, one in the right arm, one in the right torso. The weapons are well spread out, with the weapons that want to be at range 10 all in the right torso, so if you lose that left torso to an ammo crit, you still have that option to skirmish with the 2 large lasers. 585 movement profile, fusion engine, 22 heat sinking is pretty good for this mech. It's going to get a little hot if you're jumping and firing all of your weapons, but it's fairly comfortable if it's just running or walking. Great armor protection. Maxed armor for a 50-tonner is super solid. The comparison I make with the Star Slayer is, what if a crab had jump jets? That's basically what this mech is. And everyone seems to love the crab quite well, so they should also love the Star Slayer. Now, if you want to pay a little bit of extra battle value, $1,500, kind of expensive. $1,600 is starting to get into that prohibitive territory of not being worth the cost. However, this is an all-energy mech. No ammo to crit out in this one. A little bit of extra heat sinking kind of really doesn't do the trick here. We are producing 23 heat just with our large laser and ERPPC, so unlike the 3C, which can kind of comfortably fire all of its weapons at close range in an alpha strike and then cool down the next turn, the 3D definitely doesn't want to be doing that. Now, the 3D does have a better rear-mounted weapon in the head, which is kind of nice to have. You can scare off those pesky light mechs from flanking you, which is a great thing for cavalry to be able to do, but I prefer the 3C for its battle value efficiency, its ability to crit seek, as well as do efficient raw damage with all of those energy weapons, and its overall better heat efficiency. Are there any cavalry mechs that I missed here? Please leave them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. I always love learning about new crazy mechs and hearing people's opinions on what their favorite mechs in every role are. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out a lot. Hit that little bell notification thingy so that YouTube will let you know when I'm going live with live streams. I've been doing a lot of live streaming lately, including some very cool mecha strategy games that Battletech fans would definitely be a fan of. So go check out the live tab on my channel to see what I've been up to there. I stream at about 5:45 p.m. EST just about every single day. Hope to see you there, Mech Warriors. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.